I'm here with Pat Haapanen, who happens to run sound for...
Toby Mac.
Is that the only one?
Yeah.
No other ones?
Not here, yeah.
Mr. Mac
Just
himself.
Mr. Mac. Yeah.
Well, we are in Atlanta, Georgia. We've got some cool things going on here.
Yeah.
So usually what I do is I kind of hit a little rewind button. I want to hear how you got into sound, where you're from, what's your social security number, your mother's maiden name, your first vehicle, your first dog,
Nice.
all of that. So where are you from?
Originally from Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay.
Just outside of, actually. Grew up there. Went to college in North Dakota, which is kind of where I started getting into production. Worked for a regional company there, renting DJ equipment, little lighting and sound systems and whatever. And eventually worked into doing festivals and different shows around county fairs, all that kind of stuff. Working all departments. We did everything: lighting, video, backline, audio. And I was there for about 6 years, and then made some friends in Nashville and moved down here and got started focusing just on audio.
Okay. So take me to your very first tour. Was it Toby Mac was your first tour?
It was.
Was it really?
Yeah. Yep. About a year after I moved to Nashville, I got put on the audio crew for Toby Mac in 2015. And I was the system engineer on it, so flew PA, tuned the rig, mixed a couple openers, and yeah, that was it.
And you've been here?
I've been here ever since.
Ever since. Who was doing sound when you first joined?
A guy by the name of Ryan.
Ryan. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the TM, PM sound guy, like everything for a long time. So I was his assistant for.
Were you on
years.
Digico back then, or have you always been on Digico?
Yeah, we had, when I started, we had a SD10 was the console. And I actually just switched to this one last year. Okay. This is my second year.
So for people who don't know who or what Toby Mac is, if they're living under a rock, how would you explain it?
Christian artist. He's been around for a long time. Started in a group, trio group called DC Talk, early 90s, and then went solo after that. And I think he's on year like 25 or something in his solo career.
Has it been that long since DC Talk?
Yeah.
When did Jesus Freak come out? Was it that long ago? Oh my goodness, now I'm getting old.
I think so, yeah.
Oh my Lord. That was a great album. So one of the things, let me see if I can grab this here. One of the things we do is I've got a Patreon and I've got subscribers on there, and I want to give a special shout out to those guys, but they can ask questions and I can give them a shout out. And one of the questions that they had here from Casper is asking in terms of, I'm sure we're going to talk more about this in a minute, but in terms of the adaptive array system. Yeah. Have you ever encountered any limitations with Anya in certain venues? And if you have, how do you work around them? So if you guys want to be able to ask questions like that, please go to our Patreon, subscribe to it, and you'll be able to do this. So thank you to Casper for that. But let's maybe talk a little about what you are doing with the PA, and they can kind of answer that question.
Yeah, so we've got the main sound system is all full adaptive. Anya, Anna, and Auto. All three boxes are out here. Anya is our main box, the long throw. Anna's on the side. And then Autos we fly behind it all. And basically it gives us a really great coverage pattern through the entire room that we don't really have to worry about what it sounds like upstairs, what it sounds like down underneath it. It's super consistent. As far as limitations go, the only thing I've really run into occasionally in smaller venues is a weight restriction. And for that, we just figure out what we need to shorten the array a little bit, but it doesn't matter if you got one box or 10 like we've got here. Coverage is the same.
What do you think is the biggest pro in terms to using a system like this?
For me, it's it's the timing and alignment of the mains and sides and subs and everything working all together, because the way they fly is they're literally buckled together. So
Yeah.
there's no, you don't have to time the mains of the sides. You don't have to worry about seams or anything like that. It's treated as one solid column, one solid speaker, which makes it super easy to get a great sound in every seat across the arena.
What made you want to go the adaptive route?
The shop I work with bought it, and we started using it on different shows, and I started getting in front of it a little bit and hearing it and working with it in the software and all that. And it seemed like a really great solution for what I was doing, which was, at the time, I was the SE and the engineer. So for my like day to day, having a system that's easy to tune as this, and knowing that it's going to do what it sounds like right here, it sounds like everywhere.
Yeah.
That was a huge plus for me. Plus, I really liked the transparency of it.
What would you say was the biggest learning curve with it?
Network audio was a big one. Something I haven't done a lot with until this rig. So yeah, learning Dante and how all that works and reacts in different ways. You know, if you have something patched backwards, for instance, like finding those problems in it and fixing them or whatever. But yeah, the network side was a big one, and the rest of it was fairly easy. I mean, it's like learning anything new. You know, you kind of got to dig into it and figure it out. But their software and training stuff is all really easy to use.
So what would be your advice to somebody who's going to be looking into taking this or wants to take it out or going to be mixing it the first time? What's your typical advice to them?
Especially for guys mixing on it, like on this tour, for example, we have a lot of guest engineers, and our advice to them is always like, treat it like you're mixing on a studio monitor system, because it's very present in, you know, even 115 feet back like we are, it's still like right in your face. So you just kind of feed your mix into it almost gently, you know, until you kind of get your hands around it, because it's going to give you back exactly what you put in.
For this one, you have a massive thrust.
Yep.
You almost have two stages on for this show. Would you call it like an A stage and a B stage? Yep. Talk to me a little bit about the thrust and the complications with it, and with using this PA. Are you shooting beyond that? Where are you having the throw be for it with this massive thrust?
We honestly treat it just like any normal room. Like, there would be chairs there. The only thing I don't have is like any sort of center fill or anything like that.
Okay.
Like, if I didn't have the thrust, I would maybe think about that, having something in the middle or more front fills or something like that. But yeah, otherwise it doesn't really affect it very much at all. And even side to side is not bad. I haven't had any trouble with feedback or anything like that and being in front of it.
To people who are using the thrust for the very first time coming into arena, this is kind of a new thing for some people. Usually, especially for sheds or theaters, you're not really dealing with that. So what advice do you have, or what are some recipes for success to dealing with that without having crazy feedback? Because the idea, a microphone in front of speakers would be feedback, especially that much noise. Yeah. What's your advice for that?
Definitely microphone choice is a big one. You want something a little tighter pattern. Helps a lot. But I feel like because of this PA, the way it's aligned and the way it hangs straight, you've a lot less phase wraps in the mids and highs. In fact, there's really none. And I think that has a big part to do with it. It keeps everything just nice and smooth, so you can get a lot more out of it before you start running into trouble. I mean, it will, like anything, it will feed back. Physics will win eventually, but I mean, I have no trouble hitting, whatever level I want with the vocals out there. So
you started with them, you said, in 2015?
15, yeah.
So 10 years.
Yeah.
How has your mix evolved since you first started? Or has it been pretty much a rinse, wash, repeat, or how has it grown since then?
No, I kind of was given a file in the beginning. I took over mixing Toby in 2018. So and we had a file that the last guy used, and I kind of took that and made some changes through rehearsal, but the bulk of the construction of the file was his. And then I think in 19 I started fresh, my own, the whole redo of everything. And then I would say about every year and a half to 2 years, I kind of do a flatten out and like a refresh. Like the construction, the file's the same, the layout will change based on, we've gotten some new band members and stuff like that, so you get some new instruments.
Yeah.
But the bulk of the file, main routing and all that kind of stuff is all the same. But I'll go through and wipe all the processing and just start fresh.
I was wondering about that. Could you walk me through a little bit of like rehearsals? Are you doing a lot of snapshots with this?
Yes.
So how do you
Lots.
create your snapshots from rehearsals, and how do you build that? Do you wipe it all, do from scratch, or you start from where you were at the last run?
Typically what I do, like, so for this tour, I was in the shop and I set up some near fields and a little sub, like kind of a little studio setup just in the shop, and played tracks back, flattened everything, played tracks from the last tour, kind of got in a spot where I dialed everything in. And then I took my snapshot list and updated everything to the same fader level. So like it was the same mix across everything. And then once we get into rehearsals and we start going song to song, then that's where I'll make my changes and update from there. But the base mix starts off the same. So then, you start with a song that's, real heavy guitar song, and push the guitars up, save it, move on to the next one, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Have you only done CCM World?
Since I've lived in Nashville, yeah.
Have you noticed a difference from CCM World to the other worlds? And if so, like, what do you think is the biggest difference?
I don't know, I guess exactly. I feel like they do a lot more festivals, a lot more like self-contained stuff, I feel like, where they're just like running around doing shows wherever and however they can, like I've really only done a lot of like, I've done like country festivals, being like on the festival crew, being the house guy or whatever, and just seeing people coming through. So
I do know one thing that's unique is that you all are using the same console. That's something you don't normally see in that other world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this tour, it's always been that way. It kind of started with, we had younger, smaller acts and stuff like that just didn't have people, didn't have gear, just got invited to come play on this tour, and so we basically just took care of them, and it's kind of just been that way,
Yeah.
So yeah, we share it all, and it makes it easier as far as front of house and keeping it clean and whatnot. But
I'm sure you've seen, especially in this world, a lot of front of house guys at churches also sit up here. What do you think is the hardest transition from them going from a church to something like this?
I feel like anything like a house gig like that, like a church gig or anything, getting the length of the day and like setting up and tearing down every day, everything every day, and like learning how to make things look good but also be efficient as far as like running cables and how you're setting it up every day. I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
You guys played a lot of churches, right?
Yeah.
What advice could you give to churches that are taking in touring acts or have considered and want to do something like that? What advice would you give to them at this level to be able to
host a tour? One of the biggest things I think we run into is power service is a big one, which is not necessarily an audio thing, but that's one of them. And audio related, I would say, is direct access to the PA. A lot of times when you're going into churches, you run into somebody else's console, and then that runs to, somewhere else, and eventually it comes out of the PA, but you don't know what exactly is going on between you and the speaker system. So that would be something that I would suggest if you're bringing people in.
So for this run, what is your favorite song to mix?
I think one of my favorites is it's one of the, well, it's been out for a little while, but I think The Goodness is one of my favorites.
Why is that?
It just has good energy. It's got a good groove behind it, and it's fun vocally to mix. They trade off between Toby and one of our BGVs. Kind of has some step outs, and so it's a fun one.
What would you say is the last song you mixed that made you feel emotional in a good way?
In a good way.
To open it in a bad way, flip the console over. Maybe an emotional bad way.
So we used to do this medley of like old Toby Mac songs that for me were new, because I didn't know the old stuff very well, and they were fun. Just heavy, thick guitars, just a lot of, and tons of energy. Those ones are always fun. I like those.
Tell me about the last concert that you went to that you were really, really inspired by.
I guess one of the ones that I really enjoyed was Maroon 5. It was quite a while ago, but it was a fun show. Just, again, high energy.
Yeah.
But sounded great, and it's kind of along these lines, real poppy with some rock mixed in and stuff like that. So I was kind of paying attention to what they're doing, and how they're fitting things in the mix and all that. So that was a good one.
It's interesting because you say high energy, and there's a lot of bands out there that's kind of a wall of noise that just kind of comes at you, and you're not going to get the energy with the dynamics of the lower bits as well. Tell me about how you create space for dynamics here, and you create space for that energy.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of songs that are kind of in the middle, and then we've kind of got a whole section in the middle of the show that's a little more down, a little slower, ballad kind of stuff. So the set list for sure helps with that. We come out strong, and we kind of roll through some different moods and whatever, and end up again. But even within songs, you've got a nice, soft, pretty verse that comes into a big chorus. So typically what I'll do is I have my whole band on a control group, and I'll end up kind of tucking them back, in the verses, and then big choruses come in, and you kind of push everything up. You kind of like just a little bit, I don't even know if anybody really notices, but you kind of add to that feeling, of when the song raises up, you kind of give it a little more, and have a little bit of movement in it like that. And same with, the high energy songs are going to be louder, and you're feeling more, and then we get to the more soft and tender stuff, and everything comes back and is nice and soft and quiet. And
okay, talk to me a little bit about low end in a room like this. I think one of the hardest things is being able to control your low end. And I was talking with Pooch the other day. He was talking about how concerts are really like that 200 and below is massive for a room like this. And
yeah.
How do you, that'll make or break a show. Talk to me a little bit about how you control your low end.
I have my subs are driven to the PA, fed to the PA on their own matrix. So if it gets crazy, I've got a way to tone them down or EQ them separately. And then from there, a lot of it's in the PA control. So we'll tune them, we'll get, if there's something poking out or whatever, hanging out in the room too much, we can adjust them there. And the big one for me was moving them up in the air. We ended up flying them. We started flying them probably 7 years ago. And that has made a huge difference, because you're not you don't have to use them as much to get through people. When you got subs on the front line, you got a bunch of people in front of them, all that energy just gets eaten up. So you lean into them more, which causes a lot more discomfort in the front rows.
Yeah.
And a lot more complaints.
Yeah.
So for me, I can beat them up pretty good, having them up in the air.
Yeah.
And behind the PA, then it's all working together, coming out, and yeah, get great coverage.
Are you using much outboard gear? Is it mainly in the box? Are you using waves or UA?
Mostly in the console with some waves. On waves mostly is like more bus compression stuff, and then I do a lot of my vocal processing in waves. And then other than that, I've got a reverb and a delay unit that are analog.
Okay, so I ask this question quite a bit on the show, and it feels like there's always kind of the same answer with it. But what's your advice to people who want to get in this industry, specifically in the CCM world?
Talking to people and getting into wherever you can get into, working with some sort of company or church is a good way to get in. But yeah, like my path was, I started, renting out speakers at a, little shop or whatever, and you kind of start to learn it and get into it. But yeah, definitely getting in somewhere where you can experience it.
Yeah.
Whether you go to a shop and you're, a cable tester or a speaker tester or whatever, and just work your way up.
I think there's a lot of people who want to go out and tour. They don't understand it's kind of tough, especially in lifestyle and home life. How do you keep your sanity through going on tour and being on a tin can for months on end, living right next to people? How do you keep your stability through that?
I think if you can get in with a group that you enjoy working with and living with, essentially,
Yeah.
that helps a lot. And yeah, just when you're home, you can relax and do the things you want to do, fun things, whatever. And then yeah, when you come back out, it's work time.
That's awesome. So typically speaking, how are you laid out?
So for me, typically I'm masters and control in the middle.
I'm going to do this. Okay.
And then I do band on the left side, and vocals and effects and all my utility stuff, playback and whatnot on the right side. Is kind of my most comfortable layout.
Can you tell me what that is? You told me earlier.
This guy, yeah, this is my little squawk box. It's just a speaker. I have all my talkbacks routed through that. For our comm system, we all, instead of having actual comm, we just run talkback mics. So that comes through there on one side, and then the other side is comes off my computer for playback for whatever I need, background music if I want. Or
that is kind of cool. So your sound check tuning process. I know you got an SE here.
Yep.
Are you a virtual playback guy? Do you play some songs? What do you do?
Yeah, I typically almost always start with pink noise just to see nice cleanly what it's doing, and then from there I'll play a few songs, track, whatever songs, and then usually I'll end with playback just to see, yeah, just see how the room's reacting to the actual mix.
That's cool.
Make sure it's all sitting nice.
What's the coolest trick you've learned recently?
I've been getting into, probably the last year, I've been getting into more MIDI controlled stuff.
Okay.
And letting the console fire other things like computers and different things like that, or these old delay unit and stuff like that, programming that stuff, and then having the snapshots recall and everything for me.
That's cool.
So that's been kind of fun. Yeah, I mean, MIDI's been around forever, but I just haven't done much with it. So
is there any genre of music you're dying to mix for?
I'm a big country music fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Who'd
think
you pay to go
I
on
think-
tour with?
who'd I pay to go on?
Yeah.
I don't know. That would be an interesting one. I like I think Dirk Bentley's camp seems really fun. I think that would be a good one to
That's cool.
yeah. He's got a good mix of like the poppier stuff and the bluegrass stuff and yeah.
Tell me about the craziest, weirdest mix you've ever had to do.
Oh wow. So this was a long time ago, but we did a 4th of July show for it was the state of North Dakota.
Okay.
So we were at the Capitol. They had a full band, like a I don't know, 8-piece band, on top of an orchestra, full orchestra, and we had to mic everything. The whole band, all the singers, the whole orchestra, and the way we did it was I was mixing monitors on that one, so I had speakers all over the stage, in-ears, and all that stuff. But I also mixed the orchestra. Basically, I mixed sections of the orchestra and bust them out to the front of house guy.
Interesting.
So he mixed the band. Yeah, he mixed the band with monitors from front of house for just them. I mixed the orchestra monitors
And bust down to front
and
of house.
bust him the orchestra.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Interesting.
I still don't really know how it worked or how it sounded out there, but it was a wild day for sure.
So there's people who watch this at small clubs, small churches. What advice would you give to them from your level to be able to be better at their mix, or to be able to maybe one day get to where you're at? They see this like, yeah, we get this, but you're way up here and this is untangible. Give me something like in my level. What can they do where they're at right now?
Yeah. I would say because that's kind of where I started too. And me and my buddy worked together for a long time, and we would always just try different things. Like we did a lot of experimenting, learning like in practice, kind of figuring out what worked and what didn't, what we liked or didn't like. Whether that's mic placements, mic choices, um, and then just a lot of console stuff. Like what do you do if you just can't get a snare to sound like the way you want it? What are some things? And so we'd try like, okay, let's compress the crap out of it and gain it back up. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Top, bottom mics, just different.
So turn the knobs.
Yeah, exactly. Just try different things. There's a lot of rules with audio, but at the same time, there's really no rules. Like
Yeah.
if you get the end result you want, then it's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I went through a period of just like trying a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
and learning what worked and what didn't, and
Well, that's awesome.
yeah.
Well, I know I've probably taken up too much of your time, and there's everybody coming in and loud music. So,
Yeah.
If people want to follow you and follow your career, where can they follow you at?
I do have Instagram.
Okay.
I don't post a ton, but every now and then I
What's your Instagram?
out there. So it's my last name and my first two initials, Haapanen PD.
Okay. Or come
Yep.
to a Toby Mac near or come to a Toby Mac show near you.
There you go.
Come over here, poke him with a stick.
Yep.
See if he's alive. Wave at him. Thank you, man.
Sweet. Thank you.